The world around us is hostile to the Word of God and to biblical values, but we are called to be salt and light, to stand for truth in a decaying culture. We are not called to run from the fire, but be willing to step into the fire. God has placed you at this time in history on purpose and for a purpose. Join us as we get better equipped to address civics and culture from a biblical worldview. Welcome to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church. Let's welcome our hosts Allison Furno and Debi Vandenboom.
Today's topic is being salt and light. And I have with me Robert and Jennifer Oriza from Dream City Church. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Well, thank you for the invite.
All right. We were just laughing a minute ago, so we were trying to get our bearings. We're starting. Just real quick before we start, just tell us a little bit about who you are, your background. I don't even know. I think you guys are in a similar place in life as I am as far as, how long you've been married and kids and all that. But just tell us a little bit about your story of who you are before we get into the meat of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been married for 28 years. We have 2 adult daughters. One's out of the house, one's still at the house. So we're into that next phase. I'm a small business owner. Jennifer's an IT consultant. So, and then, we've been coming here for 18 years. 18 years. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so have you lived in Arizona that whole time, or did you move here from somewhere else, or?
We moved here from California.
Okay.
Yeah. We moved here in 2005.
Left the Communist Republic of California and
thankfully.
Yes.
came to the land of the free and the home of the brave. Congratulations. Yeah. But so, and we met a long time ago in the homeschool world, right? Because you at the time were homeschooling and teaching classes for homeschoolers at the same place where I was. Both of you were, right?
Yeah, we both were.
You both taught. I don't remember what you taught. What did you teach?
Anatomy and physiology.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you taught math and science, or just math?
Math, yes, and physics.
Math and physics, yeah. Very exciting. So we did, and your kids were being homeschooled at that time.
Yeah.
Like they did some of each, right? They didn't homeschool the whole time, did they?
Correct. We've tried just about every type of schooling.
Yes.
Had them all over the place.
Yes.
Well, we just had a conversation with Ben Toma about how important that is, that parents have the right to be able to. I know you are a big fan of that, Jennifer, of school choice and parents having the right to decide what they're doing with their kids.
Yes.
So you guys, I really wanted to have you guys on this is going to be our last episode of the calendar year, because then we're going to have Christmas and Thanksgiving or it's the reverse that order, because Thanksgiving comes and then Christmas,
Right.
And all of the season of compassion, the turkey giveaway, the Christmas show, all of the things that go on. Everybody's got a lot of it. We're going to take a little bit of a break and come back in January. Hopefully Allison will be back with us at that point. Her job has been a little crazy with the political season happening, that she's not been able to be here for a little while. But I'm hoping it'll be back to normal at the beginning of the year. But awesome. I'm glad that we're doing this at the end, because I feel like you guys really represent what we're trying to do here in this civic ministry, and with the podcast and all of this getting forth is that just kind of perfect mesh of family life and church life and civics and being salt and light. That was why I titled it Salt and Light. So you guys are both involved in ministry here at the church on a volunteer basis, right? So what kinds of things do you do here at Dream City?
For me, I am head of the men's ministry. I do the men's ministry. I do the production backstage type work. I work at...
you and I have schlepped big things across the
things
stage.
Back and forth. Exactly. Yes. Literally anywhere they ask me, I serve. Because that's what I like to do.
You've helped me with voter registration.
Oh, yes. Yep.
You
over.
Brought a bunch of chairs upstairs for me when we were desperate for chairs at our last event.
The ballot. Yeah, absolutely. So this is my home. So this is where I serve. I like to serve. So
it's amazing. And what about you?
I serve in the women's ministry. And I also serve in the Women's Dream Center Discipleship Sunday school classes. Yes, and you can see me in the cafe or serving at a variety of tables on any Sunday, helping out whichever ministry needs help.
Right. Yeah, that's been me for the most part too, for so many years. I mean, that's how you know, we got to know each other, doing all these same things and just showing up where there's a need and doing whatever was there to do. Helping in the Christmas show.
Yes.
And you also do stuff at the Dream Center too, right? Don't
Yes.
you help
Yep.
with?
I do a weekly Bible study down there with the Dream Center.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if there's anybody listening that does not know what the Phoenix Dream Center does, why don't you just explain that real quick? Like, what is the Phoenix Dream Center?
What is a Phoenix Dream? It's a, how do you say it? I don't want to say it's a recovery center. It is a way back into life, if you will. People off the street, out of the prison system, young adults that are coming out of the system, trafficked young women, trafficked and everything. It's a place. It's a
Restoration.
a Christian-based restoration center, if you will, where they go and they try to, a lot of them don't know Christ. Some of them do. But then they come back and then they increase that walk with him again. So, and I'm down there just to help them along the way. Been through some of the things they've been through, and so it's they relate because I can relate with them. So
Yeah.
and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, I do too. I love I love the Dream Center. I love to be. Yeah.
Yes.
It's amazing. And so with that, how long have you, like, what is your Christian walk? How long have you guys been following the Lord? I don't know that about either one of you.
Since '08.
Okay.
So I think it was like I was 38 when I
Wow.
came to
Okay.
Christ. Yeah, and it was
So you guys were already married.
Yep,
Already had
already married,
kids.
had both of the girls, and it was it's a funny story. So we moved here to Arizona, and we put our youngest one into daycare. Well, it was at a church, and we're like, well, wasn't following the Lord or anything. So I'm like, I wonder, maybe we can meet people there because we moved out here not knowing anybody. So we went to the church to meet people, and the Lord started working on us through that whole process.
Wow.
And for me, it was like, it was just that one step, and it was a way to, you look back 30,000 feet, and
Yeah.
now you see how the Lord was working the whole time.
Yeah.
But for me, going through it, I'm like, how did I get here? So, but that was mine. So
Yeah.
That's true.
I think
Anything
hers
you
was a
want to
little
add to that?
different.
No, I mean, when I was younger, thankfully I had Christian friends in high school. And so I was exposed to Christians and church. I had never been in a church service where somebody said, oh, you have to actually give your heart to the Lord.
Yeah.
And it was at the Scottsdale campus with Pastor Friend when he said it when we went there. And I was like, yes, I do.
Yeah.
So that's officially when I became a Christian. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I became a Christian as an adult too. So I didn't, I was an adult. I was not married yet, but I was an adult. And so, it's
didn't
same
know.
thing. I was responded to a Tommy Burnett altar call. So it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that's, I'm kind of famous
Yes.
now, right?
Yes.
It's really amazing. And there's nothing, I was listening to him recently. I was like, there is literally nothing like a Tommy Burnett
There's
altar
nothing
call.
like a
It's
Tommy
just
Burnett
something
altar
really
call.
special.
Yeah,
It is.
absolutely.
It is
About
the
that.
anointing.
It is. Well, and it's very nostalgic for me because I just still so remember. And that's one of the things about the Dream Center, but we'll get into like what we're going to talk about. But with the Dream Center too, because I just remember that first love, right, of being there. And it's so easy to lose as a Christian. I feel like so many people, they get into just the day-to-day of life, but I feel like, that's something that I have always held on to of that first love. I feel like you guys have too. I see it
Yes.
in you, in that.
100%.
And being in that atmosphere of the Dream Center, I love it because you just see that passion and for the Lord and what God is doing in their lives. It's brand new and it's just so exciting.
Very.
So if you're not in somewhere where you're seeing that, you're missing out. I'm telling you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The Dream Center will always hold a special place in our hearts specifically because when our girls were younger, we talked about how are we going to teach them to be grateful for what they have in their life. And it's very hard. We live in America. We have everything available here, even during hard times. And So we looked at different ministries to serve in, and they were about 7 and 10 at the time. No ministry would allow us to bring a 7 and 10-year-old to any facility because they weren't 18. And so we kept saying, gosh, well, we want them to learn before they're 18, like to serve. And how are we going to do that? We went to a tour at the Phoenix Dream Center because our oldest had started a food pantry with one of her friends. And we said, wouldn't it be great to show her what they're doing bigger in the community? And we went down there, and that was back when Pastor Brian was actually doing the tours. And something he said during the tour was, what you see here, these people, they're just the tip of the iceberg. What you don't see is everything that's underneath the water. And when we restore one life at the Dream Center, we're restoring all of those lives that they're connected to that you can't see. And that really stuck with us. And he allowed us to actually bring the girls to the Dream Center. And thankfully, since we were homeschooling, we were there every day for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, for 3 years. And during that time was when Gabe and Kelly Napoleon came into the Dream Center. So the girls got to serve side by side with Kelly, making lunches for people at the Dream Center. Now, mind you, they were 7 and 10, so this was like 14 years ago or so. You fast forward all these years today, and they get to serve side by side with Gabe and Kelly, who they got to see God restore them, their marriage, and their family.
Yeah.
And you could not pay enough money to show someone this.
And,
what God can do in the lives of people.
Gabe is on staff now at the church, and like it's such a
incredible.
beautiful, it's a beautiful story. So good. And I think there's this. So your oldest daughter, is Sam, who helps with the civics ministry here. So she's one of the people that runs the meetings with me, and when we do that, we have our monthly meetings, and you guys are always. So I was, I want to say it's because of me, but I'm sure it's probably because of Sam that you're.
We're there.
You bringing your small groups into those things. I remember the last one that we did. One of the guys told me that you told them it was not optional, that they were required to be there.
That's right.
We talked about the ballot. But I think that's important, right? And so it's this pouring into one of the things that the last thing I want to talk about is relates to the church, and then I want to get into this civic engagement. But the idea of how much serving grows you, right? Your depth of your relationship with the Lord and I feel anyway, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but I feel like the depth of your, because this has been me too, right? And as soon as I came to know the Lord, I started serving. I was volunteering. I was here all the time. I helped with everything, like what you were talking about. Whatever the need was, you needed help stuffing something, setting up chairs, filling water, whatever. It didn't matter. I was there. I did it. But there's a growth that happens in serving that is unlike anything else. Like you cannot put a price tag on what happens in your life when you are faithful and you serve, and where God takes you from that. I just wanted to get your comment on that.
Go ahead.
You want me to talk?
Yep. Go first.
Okay. So I have learned that, especially when you're going through hard times, if you serve someone else, whether it's people in your family, in your community, in your church, and you're able to take your eyes off of yourself, God will work those things out in your heart and around you in ways that you could not even think or imagine. The other thing that you'll get from serving is you don't know what God is preparing you for. And so through serving, he's going to help work things out that need to be worked out in your life, in your heart. And he's going to equip you for potential future battles that you're going to face. Yeah.
Absolutely. For me, it was, I serve because one, I just love it. I've always been that servant. But for the teaching of the men, as you were saying, for me to help serve and teach, it keeps me accountable. And helps me even grow closer to the Lord, because how can I teach if I'm not studying? So I'm doing more reading, more studying. So it helps my growth as well as those others. And that, like Jennifer said, and it takes, when you're serving, doing things, and it just takes the focus off of you. And it puts it on somebody else. And I tell the guys all the time that they come in, they're having issues. I was like, well, go serve.
Yeah.
And I'm
Literally,
like, yeah, just go do something for somebody else. Just because it takes that eyes off of yourself, and that's what I love about it. And serving everything, going down to the Dream Center, the men's, and to say about the other what you're saying about I had them come up to the class is because we have to help other ministries.
Yeah.
And that's where as the men in the church, I'm trying to get them to build up to be, you're the leader of the church. You are the ones that first are involved in anything in the churches that going.
Support one another.
Yeah, and support one another. And we do a lot, and I love it.
Yeah.
So.
That's so good. And I think in addition to that, at least in my life too, is that and I've told this to a number of people that, okay, if you think about, it's really hard to steer a parked car, right? You can't turn the wheel, but if you're driving, it's easy to turn. And so it's like God will steer your life as you're going, right? If you're just stepping out and being obedient to wherever it is, whether that's, cleaning up coffee spills in the cafe or whether it's, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're stepping out, then God has a way of steering you where he wants you to go. And that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing now, is because of just stepping out and letting God direct, and the people that I've met and the things that I've learned along the way, not only just in your own personal walk, but just the skill set and the connections and the relationships that you build through that. God can do some amazing things. I mean, I just sit and marvel at, the stuff that I have going on right now, and it's because of all of that. Those years of just saying yes, and being willing to do whatever, was in front of me, and just letting God steer my life. It's been an amazing ride. It really is. It's just an amazing journey with the Lord. And so then with that, we're talking about the civic engagement, and you guys both are you're very strong supporters of the civic ministry and of all that we're doing. And like I said, your daughter is a right hand, which just really in there with all that stuff with me, and she's amazing. And but why did you start getting involved in that stuff? So were you involved before you came to know the Lord, or was it a product of you?
Definitely no. I was not involved. Actually, even most recently in the last, I would say 4 years, we got actively involved. And something for myself was that when we started talking about it's our responsibility as Christians to be active in the public square, who are your school board members? You need to be praying for them by name. I remember the day that I heard that. And I thought, okay, do I even know who my school board members are? Because I homeschooled my children. And I think one of the things that we've gotten caught up in as Christians is that, we've got to take care of our family, right? I've got to do what's right for my kids. I'm not going to send them to a school that's not a good fit for them. And we were so focused inward, we weren't focused outward in our local communities. And I personally had to repent for that. I was like, Lord, please forgive me for only focusing on my family. I'm going to go to a school board meeting. And I learned who my school board members were. I learned what they were doing, how they were spending their money. And for me personally, when I read a book called Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend reading it.
It's really good. Yeah.
I was crying in the first 10 pages learning what was happening in the school system, and I couldn't believe it. And now being active in our school
and she's not a Christian author.
She's not a Christian author. She is not a Christian author. Yeah.
But it is a very impactful book.
Extremely. So very eye-opening. And what a lot of people don't realize is that if we care about people, we have to care about politics because it creates policies that affect people. And even being in the local school boards, they have so much oversight and control over what happens to all the children in our communities that are going to those schools. It's quite concerning that we are, as Christians, not as active on the school boards. And so that's what I've been advocating for and going and speaking out and making sure that my school board knows where we stand and what we're looking for.
And so you have just your local school board.
Yes.
You're going to one school board. You're going to every meeting and sitting there, and you started learning and started speaking up. And I think that's important because I think sometimes people feel like they have to do 20 things, but you've really made you've built a lot of relationships in that school board.
Yes.
You helped candidates that were running this last time. And you can have a lot of impact by just picking one thing, right? So even if you just step out and do one new thing, it's really important. And then you don't have to do everything. And you can't do everything. So you figure out where your passion, where that interest is, and you step out and you do that.
Yes.
And you had even, you talked about this in one of the meetings, but I'd like you to tell here about that the superintendent even called you. And
Yes, because when I first went to the school board meeting, I had no idea what I was doing. And I saw that I could fill out a card to speak. I didn't even know what I was going to speak about. And so I said, well, I'm just going to say that we should not allow pornography in our schools, because I knew that we had books like that in the schools and a lot of parents had been talking about it. So I went and spoke about it, and I went to every meeting and said, please do not approve any pornographic books to be put into our district any longer. The superintendent contacted me, wanted to speak with me directly. I went to a meeting at his office. I learned that the superintendent, while he doesn't have say over voting on your school board, he did implement the policies that were approved. So that's what he was responsible for. But he was very concerned that I was coming to every school board meeting and why was I doing it? And I told him, because I don't want you to approve any more pornographic books to be put in our school system. And I even had one of the school board members called me personally and asked me to stop coming to the meetings and stop asking for this, because people think that we have pornographic material in the schools. And I said, well, we do. We don't want that anymore for the children.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I've been asked that. As you said, people in the community notice also. I will get random text messages from people I don't even know who they are, and they will say, thank you so much for coming in and taking a stand.
Yeah,
This
and
is
that's a very simple thing when you
Yes.
think about it, right? It's
Yes.
not a super complicated thing.
No.
It's showing up to a meeting. What is it, like twice a month?
It's twice a month,
Twice
sometimes once a month. Yeah.
or once a month. That's not a huge,
No time commitment.
time commitment, and just saying something respectfully.
Yes.
And that's literally what you've done. That sounds like such a small thing, right?
Yes.
But God uses those small things to make an impact, and it's being faithful.
Yes.
So what we were talking about with ministry,
Yes.
right? Being faithful in
Yes.
that's when you really have the impact, because people start to know who you are, and you can help other people learn how to speak up and
Yes.
start vetting candidates for
Yes.
school board and that kind of thing. That's so good.
Yes.
I love that. And then you do you do something different, right, in the
Yes.
political arena. So how did you get started?
And it was really Charlie Kirk when he was coming here saying we got to get involved somehow, some way. And the one that I found that I saw a lot of females in it, and I was like, well, we need more males to speak up to, again, like I said, males need to step up in their, not only in their homes, their church and the community. So if I'm going to teach my guys to do the same thing, I was like, okay, I need to do it first. So I stepped into the precinct committee, the PC of our LD, and started going to their meetings. And
So LD, for people who don't know, it stands for
the legislative district.
legislative district, and your district has a meeting. There's 30 districts in
Yep.
Arizona, and your district, each party has their own meeting once a month.
Once a month, yep.
Where this is where local level politics
Yes.
happens, and you get elected to represent your neighbors and talk about all kinds of political things. And
Right. So every LD is broke up into precincts.
Yes.
So as a precinct committee, you go and talk again to your neighbors, and
very grassroots level.
It really is. I was knocking doors. I was calling people. I was texting people. One, just to see if they were, if they're engaged, try to help them get engaged with that aspect of it. So, and that's where I started at.
Yeah.
And it started from, again, like we said, when Charlie Kirk started coming here, he opened my eyes. And you just don't know. You don't
Yeah.
know that you don't know. And
Yeah.
then when he started talking, it's like, okay, so how do you get into it? She always calls me the mayor anyway because I know everybody.
Well, I thought you were the king and queen. Earlier,
He's also the mayor.
he's also the mayor. Okay. Earlier, when I asked how to introduce them, they said the king and queen.
Yes.
So I was like, all right, so now we're the mayor. It's a step down from king.
But that's all right. That's all right. Because I know a lot. I'm always talking to people. I don't have a fear of talking to people, new people. I'm always out there, and and that's one of the things. So now that I started doing it in my men's group, I just reached out to them and said, hey, you got to get involved in somehow, some way. Like you said, it doesn't need to be big or anything like that. But from that, another two of the guys in our group became precinct committee in their LDs.
Yeah.
So, which was amazing.
Yeah.
So now we've got men from our men's group getting involved in the public square. So I love it.
Which is fantastic, and those again, right? It's something small, right? So that when you're a precinct committeeman, it's once a month a meeting, and then however much time you want to commit to doing outside things, like you were talking about, knocking on your neighbors' doors, texting, offering help. In campaign seasons, it's a little bit crazier, but again, you're not forced to do a certain amount of time.
No.
But those were the people out passing out, like golden tickets or where you go vote or all that information that comes door to door. A lot of those people were precinct committeemen going out and working for their legislative districts, passing out information for both parties, right? They both do it. And doing that. And so again, it's a small thing that has a big impact. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
And both of them have their share of drama.
To say the least.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I've been a precinct committeeman for over 20 years.
Yes, I was going to say.
I've been a state committeeman. And, you get there and it's just like those people really like to argue about nothing sometimes. There's a lot of drama that goes on. So with both I feel like with the school boards and with the LDs, it's a little bit different because I think in the school districts, they tend to kind of try to, sometimes make things take a really long time so that people go away and they don't.
They do.
Right? Explain how that works in that.
Well, recently, over the last year, when you went to speak as a public comment, is what they call it, and you came to the school board meeting, you would normally go after opening comments. There were a few things that happened, and then the public was allowed to speak. Well, they decided to change public comments to the very end of the agenda. So now you have to wait.
But you have to sign. You have to be there before the meeting starts.
You have to be before the meeting starts. You have to be there the entire time. Yes. So they're definitely trying to discourage people from giving public comments because sometimes you might have to sit there for 2 hours listening to all of their agenda items before you can give your public comment. Yeah.
And then I know some of the districts fiddle with like the amount of time that people have.
Oh, they do.
So there's some of that has to go. You just have to be faithful and stick in there, right?
Yes.
And then legislative districts have a whole different sort of drama.
Oh, yeah.
And depending on your district, some of them are more crazy than others.
Yes, ours was crazy this season. But and I look at it as there's the old school and the new.
Yeah.
And they're the old school doesn't want to give up anything. They want to keep everything the same as it used to be.
Right.
But it's not working. So we got the new people coming in. And like, okay, well, teach us how to do what we need to do.
Right.
And they're like, well, you just do it this way. And it's like, you weren't getting anything, especially as being somebody who was new. So we had people that have been doing it, but they wanted to go
keep control of
they want to, if you will, to work on American, I say it, to make America great again.
Right.
Those guys that were trying to look at the state, how can we fix it?
Right.
There's nothing wrong with it. So you had two different ones going on, and then they were arguing.
Right.
In the meetings, you're like, okay, this is not helping anybody.
Right.
So, but I did learn a lot, and I met a lot of the people that were running, especially because it was in season, voting season. So I met a lot of the people that were running, which was good because I actually got to talk with them and see where their stance was and actually look at them in the eye, which was very good because most people don't know who they are.
Right, because you're in a room with, how many people?
There's probably 120.
Depending on the size of the district.
Yes.
Some of them are smaller. And everybody that's running for office from your party
Yep.
is going to be at these meetings because they want your help. They want you to help get signatures for them or pass out their yard signs or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they come, and that was one of my favorite things too, is you get to meet these people face to face and ask them questions. You can ask them whatever you want, and talk to them and get to know them.
Yes.
So you do have to deal with some drama, right? It's not going to be easy, just like anything in life, right? I
Yes.
mean, who wants to sit for 3 hours at the DMV and wait for something, right? Or whatever. Like there's sit on hold with tech support for an hour and a half waiting to figure out what's wrong with your computer. So there's things that we do that are not always fun, right?
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
they're important. And it's important to have rational, sane, not crazy Christian worldview, people with Christian worldview in those areas of civics, right?
Yes. Yep.
Because there are a lot of people who are not. They're either not
They're
super emotionally stable and get really worked up, or they don't have a worldview that matches ours.
That's right.
Even within the Republican Party, right?
Yeah,
So if we're talking about within
absolutely.
that, there are a lot of people, even within, like, the same with the Democrat Party,
Yes.
that it's like you have very vastly different worldviews going on within a party. And so which worldview is going to prevail? That requires us to step up, and especially people who have a solid relationship with the Lord. What is that next step to get involved?
Right.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to speak up with that. And I the guys that are doing the PC, they're like, man, you don't ever get a chance to talk. And I was like, well, you just have to have that courage to, put your hand with new business, speak something up, because either that or you're going to get rolled over.
Right.
And that was one of the things that, you just have to speak up.
And you learn by doing, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's
Yes.
true
Fail.
in ministry. You don't know what you're doing, and you just step in and help. And you talked about that in the school board. You didn't know what you were doing when you first showed up, and you didn't know what you were doing when you first showed up to the precinct, committee meeting. I didn't know what I was doing when I first showed up. But you learn as you go. It's just a matter of being faithful and taking that open door and going. So whatever your passion is, right? Again, we said that we can't do everything, but whether you're, if you want to start going to city council meetings, we need people in there because that's a giant mess.
Yes.
At the state legislature, precinct committee meetings, school board meetings, walking your neighborhood, making sure people know what they're doing, finding and helping elected people who are going to run for office, right?
Right. Yes.
There are a million little things that people can do. So find something new to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to add in or say before we wrap up here?
No, just for me, it was like you have to get involved to truly understand.
Yes.
One of the things that I worked the polls this year, and I saw a lot of different things, a lot of people making comments, and I'm like, there's a lot of people that are just uneducated about our electoral, and I think it's by design, but they're uneducated on everything, that the process and how it happens. I was one of them. I still am, because I don't know anything outside of what I know right now. But I plan on growing even more, because one, like you said, if the men of the church are not in the public square and we leave it up to the women to do it, not to be any sexist or anything like that, but then we're abdicating our role as leaders. And so, and for me, that was one of the things that I'm like, okay, we need to step up. And by doing that, hopefully other guys want to do it as well. And even in church, I had a lot of people come up and asking me, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And I've texted you multiple times. What about this, Debbie? If I didn't know it, I texted you.
Right.
But that's they're engaging now, which is amazing. So if we're doing that, then we're going the right direction. So.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't know until you start getting into it, and then you learn stuff. So that was like I was saying, I didn't know any of it either, and I had to, people ask me questions. I'm like, I'm not sure. Let me find out. Anything else you want to add?
I would just say, don't be afraid to weave it into your everyday conversations.
Yes.
So I also talk about the public square in my Bible study classes, and I just ask people, even if they need help, do you need help finding out what school board you live in, right? I will go with you to your school board meeting if you need help doing that. It can be very intimidating and very confusing, and I think that it feels very overwhelming for people, but I agree with what you said. Just pick one thing and just do it and try it. And just like ministry, if you like it and it's a good fit, great. If not, you can try something else.
Yeah. I really think that applies to both, right? Into serving in the church and in civics. You step out, let God direct you. You find that place that fits really well for you, and then watch Him work in that. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Yes. Well, that's fantastic. I'm so glad you guys were able to be here. So I feel like this was a good. So in prepping for 2025, right? Because we're getting ready. We'll have break with Thanksgiving and Christmas. We're going to start back in January. We need to make sure that we keep the momentum going. Yes. And you know, we had Pastor Tommy and Pastor Luke both said, you know, we have this window of time where we, as the church, as Christians, as believers, really need to take advantage of this time that we have to both preach the gospel, get people to come to know the Lord, and also really, you know, we saw in this political season how far the worldview has shifted. The worldview of your average voter in Arizona, and I mean, when we have passed that horrendous 139, we passed legalized pot 2 years ago. Like, it's just you're seeing the worldview has shifted so radically and that's our fault, right? We as the church, because we're not talking about these things. So be thinking about this over the holidays. You know, if you're having conversations on Thanksgiving, start talking to your kids. But and really start, you know, praying and asking God where you should step out, because it's all going to start back up again in January. The school boards will start meeting, city council will meet, the state legislature will go into session. There'll be lots of opportunities for you to step up and get your foot in the water and get involved and start making a difference, being salt and light. So thank you so much for joining me here today on Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify and follow us on social media. Find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.